What if Luca Changretta won the Vendetta? A Peaky Blinders. What if story intro? There are men who understand that winning a war and winning a peace are different skills. Tommy Shelby is one of those men. He has spent his entire life fighting on multiple fronts simultaneously: the criminal, the political, the personal, and he understands that the battle you win today must be followed by the arrangement that makes tomorrow safe. He has always been better at that than his enemies. But in the spring of 1926, Luca Changretta gives him a problem he cannot arrange his way out of. In the history we know, Tommy finds an escape valve. He reaches across the Atlantic to Changretta's enemies, the New York men who have their own grievances, their own arithmetic, their own reasons to want Luca Changretta gone. He builds an alliance against an alliance. He turns Changretta's own world against him. It works. Changretta dies. The vendetta ends. The Shelby family survives, damaged, grieving John, but still standing. But what if it didn't work? What if the American deal, the one piece of strategy that gave Tommy his way out, fell apart? What if Changretta got there first? What if the men Tommy called across the Atlantic were already bought, already threatened, already persuaded that the money was on the other side? What if Luca Changretta simply won? This is the history of what happens after. Part 1. The deal that doesn't come through. February 1926. Birmingham. Snow on the cobblestones. The cold that comes off the canal at night and doesn't lift until noon. John is in the ground since Christmas. Arthur is held together with prayer and whiskey and a level of controlled fury that could go either way on any given morning. The legitimate businesses are running, but they run because of Tommy's name and the fear that Tommy's name creates. Remove Tommy and the architecture weakens. He knows this. He has always known this. It is the argument for making himself indispensable and the argument against it at the same time. He has one play left. He has identified the lever, the Italian-American families in New York who have their own reasons to want Luca Changretta removed. Old debts, territorial disputes, the particular grievances that accumulate between men who do business in the same dark corners. Tommy has made the call. The terms have been discussed. There is an agreement in principle. And then, in the first week of March 1926, the agreement in principle becomes no agreement at all. It is done quietly. No confrontation. No counter-offer. Simply the gradual silence of men who were making promises and have stopped making them. The contacts go cold. The intermediaries stop returning calls. The New York end of the operation shuts down like a lamp extinguished in a far room. Changretta got to them. Tommy does not know how, whether it was money or threat or information that should not have been accessible. It does not matter. The result is the same. He is alone. He is out of moves. And for the first time in his adult life, Tommy Shelby sits in the silence of a house and cannot find the next thing. He is thinking about this, turning it over, looking for the angle he has missed, when the car pulls up in the drive. Part 2. The Death of Tommy Shelby. It happens in April 1926. Not in a blaze of drama, not in the kind of scene that legends are built from. It happens in the ordinary way of violence, which is quickly and without warning, on a Thursday afternoon in Birmingham, in the kind of light that makes everything look both ordinary and final. Tommy Shelby is 40 years old. He has survived the Western Front. He has survived Inspector Campbell, the IRA, the Changretta men of earlier years, the constant arithmetic of a life built on the edge of every blade he ever held. He has survived because he always had the next move, the deeper strategy. The card no one knew he was holding. He does not have a card this time. He almost finds one. He is perhaps 15 minutes from a different version of events, a call he is about to make, a contact he has not yet tried, a gamble he would have been willing to take. The mind that built an empire from nothing is still working, still turning, still looking for the angle. 15 minutes is all it takes. Luca Changretta stands afterward in a Birmingham street in the April cold and understands, for the first time since he crossed the Atlantic, that the arithmetic is settled. Vicente. Alberto. The ledger that has been open since Small Heath, since the night his family's name was stained by Shelby hands. He closes it. He feels, for a moment, something he cannot name. Not satisfaction, something emptier than satisfaction. The feeling of a man who has spent everything he has on a single purpose and must now confront what is left when the purpose is complete. He stands in the street for a long time. Then he gets in the car. Part 3. What Polly carries. Polly Gray learns of it in the early hours. She sits in her kitchen for a long time without moving, without making tea, without doing any of the things the body does to give the mind something to occupy itself. She has used up the crying. She cried for John. She cried, in her own private way, for the years before any of this, for the children she raised, for the family she held together through poverty and loss, and the particular exhaustion of being the one who knows where the bodies are buried and why they are buried there. She has nothing left for this particular grief. What she has instead is clarity. Tommy was not simply her nephew. He was the architecture, the thing around which everything else organized itself. Without him, nothing is organized. Without him, there is no center. There is just the family, Arthur and Michael and Finn and Ada, and the weight of everything they have accumulated together, and it falls to Polly to decide what shape it takes now. Arthur arrives at dawn. He sits at her table with his hands flat on the wood and says nothing for a very long time. "Tell me what to do," he says, eventually. It is not a question he has ever asked before, not with that honesty in it. Arthur has always known what to do, because knowing what to do meant doing whatever Tommy told him. But Tommy is not here, and the machinery of Arthur Shelby, enormous, terrifying, barely contained, is running without a driver, and Arthur himself feels it. "We secure what we have," Polly says. "We protect the family. We do not go to war with Changretta today." Arthur nods. "Not today," he says. "Not today," Polly agrees. In the kitchen, the stove ticks. The morning comes in gray through the window. Tommy's son Charles is asleep upstairs, 2 years old, Grace's child, the last thing Tommy left. Polly will raise him. She does not decide this. It simply becomes true, the way certain things become true in families, not by declaration, but by the gradual weight of necessity. She goes upstairs to check on the boy. She does not look back. Part 4. Michael Gray steps forward. He arrives from London 3 days after Tommy's death. He has been there for 6 months, managing the legitimate side, the investments, the property, the parliamentary connections that Tommy cultivated with a patience that Michael always found slightly incomprehensible. Michael Gray is Polly's son. He is in his mid-20s. He has been formed in Tommy Shelby's shadow and educated in Tommy Shelby's methods. He has Tommy's calculation. He has Tommy's ambition. He has some of Tommy's intelligence. What he does not have is what the Western Front put into Tommy Shelby and never fully came out again, the knowledge of consequence. The bone-deep understanding that violence is not a strategy. It is a cost, and every cost must eventually be paid. Michael sits with Polly and says he wants to run the legitimate side. It is, from a certain angle, a reasonable plan. The legitimate businesses are functioning. The investments are sound. Michael has been managing them capably. What the plan does not account for is the reality that the legitimate businesses exist because of the criminal infrastructure beneath them. They have the legal name on the door and the legitimate income on the books, but they are standing on foundations that Tommy built with different materials. Remove Tommy and the legitimate businesses do not simply continue. They slowly lose the protection that made them viable. The police inspectors who looked the other way begin to look. The competitors who stayed away begin to approach. The arrangements that Tommy made by being Tommy need to be maintained by someone, and the someone who maintains them cannot be a 25-year-old with a good suit and a London address. Polly does not say this to Michael yet. She files it. She watches him the way she has always watched him, with love and with the particular wariness of a mother who knows her child's weaknesses because she can see them in herself. "Let's see the month out," she says. The month leads to another month, and Michael Gray, intelligent and ambitious and untempered by war, begins to fill the vacuum that Tommy left in ways that will take years to fully understand. Part 5. What Changretta actually won. Luca Changretta spends 6 weeks in England after Tommy's death, surveying what he has acquired. It is not what he expected. The racing operation requires relationships, the bookmaking networks, the protection agreements with police across 4 counties, the arrangements with jockeys and trainers, and the men who run the tracks. These things do not transfer by right of conquest. They were relationships built over years, maintained by Tommy's personal authority and the specific fear that his specific name created. Remove Tommy and the relationships go cold, not violently cold, quietly cold, the kind of cold that looks like principled neutrality and feels like deliberate abandonment. The police inspectors who took Tommy's money become suddenly scrupulous. The jockeys who fixed races become suddenly honest. The men who ran the street-level bookmaking operations become suddenly unavailable when Changretta's representatives call. Changretta is a New York man. He understands New York, the specific codes of Italian-American organized crime, the family structures, the way disputes are resolved in that world. He does not understand Birmingham. He does not understand the peculiar combination of working-class solidarity and criminal pragmatism that the Shelbys cultivated over 20 years. He does not speak the language of this place. And in Birmingham, the language is everything. By June 1926, he has sold what he could sell and returned to New York. The vendetta is complete. The ledger is closed. The account, as he understands it, is settled. What he could not account for, could not put in the ledger at all, is this. What he killed was also what made it worth killing. The value of the empire was inseparable from the man who built it. You cannot separate a Shelby from the Shelby operation and expect the operation to continue. It is not a machine. It is a man. It always was. Changretta gets home to New York a winner. He looks at his hands. He feels the emptiness that winning, when it costs this much, always leaves. Part 6. The slow decay. Without Tommy, the Shelby empire does not collapse at once. It declines slowly, the way things built around a single point of gravity decline when the gravity is removed. Arthur tries to hold the criminal side together through 1926. He has the name. He has the fear that the name creates. He has, in his own way, a deep loyalty to what Tommy built. But he does not have Tommy's patience for management, for the long view, for the particular discipline of running an organization that requires a dozen different performances in a dozen different rooms simultaneously. He also finds, in the absence of Tommy's framework, that he cannot sustain the life he has been living. Tommy gave Arthur's violence a purpose. It was always in service of something, a strategy, a protection, a message. Without the strategy, the violence has no container. It turns inward. Arthur Shelby discovers, at 40 years old, that the man he is cannot survive without direction. He goes to church, sincerely, for the first time. Not as performance, not as cover, but as a man who has run out of other options and finds, to his genuine surprise, that the thing he is offered in exchange for the life he has been living is not nothing. By 1928, Arthur Shelby is not running anything. He is tending horses. He is present for Polly in ways he was never present for Tommy. He goes to church on Sundays and sometimes on Wednesdays. He is, by the particular accounting of Arthur Shelby's life, almost at peace. Michael Gray is running the legitimate businesses. He is good at it, better than anyone expected. But the criminal gravitational pull that the Shelby name creates is pulling him in directions that Polly watches with increasing unease. He makes moves that Tommy would not have made, into narcotics, specifically, the territory that Tommy always kept separate because he understood what it meant to cross it. Michael does not have that understanding. He has the ambition without the restraint that comes from knowing what happened to men who went too far. He will learn. He will learn the way men like Michael Gray always learn, from the consequences. Part 7. Ada and what she keeps. Ada Shelby was always the one who said she wanted none of it. She built her life at a deliberate distance from Small Heath, politically active, intellectually ambitious, present in London circles that the rest of the family never accessed. She is the Shelby who reads the newspapers and understands what they mean, who goes to the meetings and knows what the movements are building toward. Without Tommy, Ada becomes the family's intelligence. She cannot replace him. She does not try. What she does instead is become the person who can see the family from the outside, who can describe to Arthur what is happening to Arthur in terms Arthur can hear, who can warn Polly about Michael in terms that do not destroy Polly's love for her son, who can make sure that Charles, Tommy's son, Grace's child, the small boy growing up in the care of an aunt and the memory of a father, grows up knowing who he comes from and what that means in all of its complexity. She is not a criminal. She will never be what Tommy was. But she holds the threads of the family together in the years after Tommy's death with a patience and an intelligence that are entirely her own. Not Shelby ferocity, not Tommy's cold strategy. Something that comes from being the one who watched all of it and drew her own conclusions. In 1931, she writes a letter to Charles. He is 7 years old. She does not know when she will give it to him. She writes it because she wants him to know, someday, who his father was, not the legend, not the fear, not the mythology that Small Heath has built around the name since the death. The man, the actual man, the one who sat in the window of his house and counted what he had and what he had paid for it. She puts the letter in a drawer. She goes back to work. Part 8. The World Without Tommy Shelby. By 1931, 5 years after his death, the landscape has shifted. The racing and bookmaking operations are diminished. What the Shelbys still run, they run more quietly. Michael Gray's operation has grown in different directions, more London-facing, more London-shaped, with the particular edge of a man who was taught by a master and has begun to believe he has surpassed the teaching. Arthur Shelby tends horses. He goes to church. He is, in his own terms, at peace. He does not know whether the peace is earned or simply accumulated from having stopped. He does not investigate the question. Polly Gray is the oldest record of what the family was and what it chose to become. She carries Tommy in the way she carried his mother, his grandfather, all the dead who made the living possible. She is the family's conscience, which is the hardest thing to be in a family that has done what this one has done. Birmingham itself has moved on. The space the Shelbys left was filled by others, newer, colder, less connected to the particular working-class fabric that Tommy understood. Whether it is worse depends on who you ask and what they needed from the arrangement before. Charles Shelby grows. He has his father's eyes and his mother's grace. He will not know for years what that combination means. He will find out. Luca Changretta is in New York, alive and settled, and in possession of a victory that feels, with every passing year, more hollow than he expected. He closed the ledger. The ledger was real. He had the right. He did what had to be done. He won. He does not find it sufficient. Outro. Winning a vendetta is not the same as winning the future. Luca Changretta came to Birmingham to settle an account, and he settled it. That is true. But what he could not account for, what no ledger for violence ever fully accounts for, is the collateral. The things that were not in the arithmetic. The son growing up without a father. The brother who found his way to peace only because the war he was fighting ended. The woman in a house in London who writes letters to a boy who will only understand them when he is much older. The Peaky Blinders were built from Birmingham, from its smoke and its poverty and its conviction that men from nothing can become something if they are willing to pay the price. Tommy Shelby was the sharpest expression of that conviction. He was what Small Heath could produce when it tried harder than it had any right to. He is gone. What he built has changed shape. What he started will continue in ways he would not entirely recognize, and some he would not entirely approve. But Charles Shelby is growing. And in the drawer in Ada's house in London, there is a letter. And the Shelbys are not finished. By order of the Peaky Blinders,